Welcome back to our November 12th Board of County Commissioner meeting. We are still out of order, and we will be doing public hearing quasi-judicial number 4, High Point PUD, and you would think that I would have already been on that page, but I'm not. Request for approval for the Third Amendment to the High Point Planned Unit Development PUD zoning agreement, including revised master site plan, C148-016, Mr. Elam.
Excuse me, Commissioner Jenkins, this is a quasi-judicial.
This is a quasi-judicial.
You just want to
You
say
would-
that for old time's sake.
Yeah,
One last time.
all right.
One more time.
So do we have any interveners?
No interveners.
Okay, would everybody stand and be sworn in that's going to testify?
Raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Proper paperwork been turned in, notices and all that.
Doug won't miss that part.
Notices were turned in at the LPA, and a copy of my agenda item and the agenda item and my work history has been turned in.
Okay, do we have any quasi-judicial,
Ex parte.
ex parte?
If I do, they're filed.
If any have been filed.
If any of them been filed from me?
I'm not at liberty to say.
I don't have any, and they've been filed.
I don't have any.
Okay, thank God. All right. You're on.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Brian Elam, Principal Planner with the Growth Management Department. This is a request by Kotler and Hearing on behalf of Pulte Home Company, LLC, for approval of the Third Amendment to the High Point Planned Unit Development, PUD zoning agreement, to remove an approximate 19.54 acre Camp Valor, also known as Operation 300 site, from the High Point PUD and add 6 single-family lots to the development, bringing the total to 290 lots on an approximate 301.46 acre property with a resulting gross density of 1 unit per acre. Included with this application is a request for deferral of public facilities reservation. The subject property is located at 10205 Pratt Whitney Road in Stewart. The existing zoning district on the property is PUD by way of the High Point PUD zoning district. High Point PUD zoning agreement, which is consistent with the estate density 1 unit per acre future land use designation. The Third Amendment to the High Point PUD zoning agreement will remove the Operation 300 parcel from the PUD and revise the master site plan to show the new boundaries between the institutional use and residential use areas resulting from an additional approximate 5.7 acres of land acquired by Pulte from Christ Fellowship Church. 6 lots have been added to an open space tract in the Phase 2 development. They're right down there. Here's the first sheet of the revised master site plan. The total site area has been reduced to be consistent with the removal of the Operation 300 parcel, and the institutional area has been reduced to be consistent with the acquired 5.7 acres, or reduced to be consistent with the acreage which was acquired by Pulte from Christ Fellowship Church. The site now consists of 290 units on approximately 301.46 acres. Other site data has been adjusted to be consistent with the removal of the Operation 300 parcel. This application was heard before the local planning agency on October 17th, 2024. The LPA voted 3-0 in favor of approving the High Point PUD Third Amendment. Development review staff have found the Pulte Group application to comply with all applicable regulations in the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan as detailed in the staff report, and staff recommends approval of this application. We move the board receive and file the agenda item and all of its attachments, including the staff report as Exhibit 1. I move that the board approve the Third Amendment to the High Point PUD zoning agreement, including revised master site plan. That concludes the presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Hurt.
Yes. Regarding the 6 additional lots, it says in the Camp Valor application that all of the gross land area of the Camp Valor PUD parcel was included and utilized for the calculation of the residential density for the High Point PUD development.
That's true.
And yet they received additional units 6 additional units, and yet the residential components of Camp Valor have not been removed.
They,
No, they've acquired an additional acreage, not from Camp Valor.
That's not what the agreements say.
Did you,
so Elise Elder, Deputy County Attorney, so all of the density from the Camp Valor lot has been given to Pulte. That was done before. They recently just acquired 6, I believe about 6 acres from Christ Fellowship, which enabled them to the additional land that they are, the additional units they are seeking today. The Camp Valor stuff was already given to High Point previously in the old PUD agreement.
So there-
It says that the Camp Valor units, the Camp Valor property no longer has residential capacity.
That's true.
Valor property, and that's how they got to the density that they have. In doing so, they stripped all the residential density from the camp. Any facilities at the camp there are just for the campgrounds themselves. There may be a caretaker residence needed at some point, but that doesn't count towards density, and there is no residential density allowed on that property.
Camp Valor talks about detached 1 and 2 family residences on the property.
I don't,
It's in the special conditions.
they're just temporary if.
Doesn't say anything about temporary.
Excuse me, Commissioner, what page are you on?
Yeah,
It's in the staff report for Camp Valor.
This is the High Point hearing, so.
I know. I'm wondering how High Point is able to get density that was stripped from Camp Valor when it appears that the density was not stripped from Camp Valor because there are single and 2-story residences there. There are bunk houses, there are cabins, there are 7 cabins, there are 6 bunk houses. There's a caretaker house that's also proposed. How can all that stuff exist if you've stripped the density from it?
give me a chance, I guess I'll pull up the Camp Valor
there's the staff-
PUD
there's
staff
the
report.
staff
You say
report.
that's in the staff report?
What page is that?
Don't know. It's in the PUD.
Okay. And this information, I mean, we have findings of compliance throughout the staff report, so I don't think it talks about that. I mean, in the
I think it's
description.
specifically on the drawing that, and in the PUD agreement, that there's no density allowed.
Right, yeah, you got us confused a
Except,
little bit.
only the caretaker,
There's a caretaker's quarters, but it's not a residence. It's just for somebody to take care of the camp, I think, when campers are in session. There are modular homes, I believe, or temporary housing for children to come and camp for a week or a weekend. There's nobody living there, and therefore there's no density being applied to the Camp Valor property. All of the density has been stripped. They can't have someone go and live in these temporary facilities. It's really for the campers. It's a rustic camp.
Yeah, I don't see any language at all that says that it can only be used for campers for 1 or 2 weeks a year.
So there is language in the, I don't have the, I can pull up the other PUD agreement, but there is language in the Camp Valor PUD agreement that says there is no residential density on the Camp Valor property.
Except that there is.
So it says roads,
If you look
streets,
at the
rights of
site-
way,
site
landscape
plan.
areas, recreational facilities, and other common facilities of the PUD. It would really help if I knew where you're seeing, where it's talking about residences.
For one, on page 2085, it says, "All structures other than detached 1 and 2 family residences which exceed 5,000 square feet or are more than 1 story in height shall be equipped with a sprinkler system." So why is it talking about 1 and 2-story residences that are larger than 5,000 square feet, that they have to have sprinkler systems? If 1 and 2-story residences don't exist on the parcel?
that sounds like a standard fire department information that they put in there.
That is language from our fire code that we put in all PUD agreements. It's standard PUD language.
Well, this is not a standard PUD in that case, because according to you, all the density has been stripped off of this property.
Correct.
That's a good point. We'd like to change our recommendation to allow us to revise number 3 of special conditions to make sure that there's no language in there that could cause any issues in the future.
We can change that language, but that's in the next public hearing.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. Yes, thank you. Fire marshal getting this.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
That it's been stripped.
I don't know who the right person is that wants to answer this, but what is the difference between how density is applied to a residential unit versus something that is temporary in nature?
Yes, residential density goes along with the land use and the zoning, and this is the actual area of the PUD that talks about the density and the use. And Camp Valor should only be used for charitable uses. Uses and development shall be consistent with Martin County Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. Let's see.
Operation 300 shall remain the sole owner and manager of Camp Valor LLC, and Operation 300 shall maintain its nonprofit designation throughout the duration of Camp Valor's ownership of the property. Any other conveyance of Camp Valor parcel must be to a 501c3.
But if you were to assign residential use, and somehow that would relate to density, what would you have to have? Would you have to have a plat? Would you have to have a site plan? Would you have to have,
First, you would have to have the zoning in place, which this does not, because the last paragraph, which I was trying to get to, basically strips it of its residential density.
okay, then what do you have to have?
You have to have homes that people live in.
Oh, no, I understand. I'm getting there. I just, for the public's purpose, listening to
So the zoning
this.
agreement does not allow any residential development on the property. It was given to High Point, as it states in number 7. To have residential density, you would have to plan for it. You would have to, eventually plat.
So you'd have a plat.
Yeah,
That would be so that you could sell lots, because you can't sell something that doesn't have a plat, and you
Correct.
can't build on something that's not platted.
correct. Yep.
Anything
You have to go
else?
through the
Like
whole-
you'd have to have a master plan or a minor site plan and a final site plan?
That shows those residential units and shows how they'd be platted and all of that. Yeah, kind of similar to what High Point has done.
Right, so none of those criteria exist on this property.
It would be
No, sir.
unlawful. Can't-
So the,
So
Yes.
the last paragraph does explain that the residential density was stripped from the.
yeah, no, I understand. I'm just trying to clarify for anybody that may be listening to the conversation.
So to show density, it would be on a master plan or final site plan. You don't always have to have a plat because the multifamily rentals would also be density. So you would have a master plan and a final site plan. And when we get to Camp Valor, you'll see the master plan for the Camp Valor PUD agreement, which is attached, shows a rustic camp. So in order to change that, Camp Valor would have to come back before this board for a new approval of a master plan. So as it stands today, there's no density, and if they ever wanted to try to get density, they would have to come back to the board, and the PUD agreement would not allow them to do that.
Thank you.
Change of use and, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just, hopefully this will be a point of clarification. Before this project was created, Camp Valerie was an accessory use of the church. They were using it and it was not a formalized area at the time. Part of the PUD was the public benefits, was the memorializing of Camp Valor, which included the anticipation of this camping and the public service that they do. This particular project then separates Camp Valor is the public benefit by which the PUD was created, and it does not have any sellable residential units within it. So the layout of the facility was essentially memorialized at this point. It has been ongoing for some time, and so that, as we see it, is the public benefit that has no density, and it is because of the PUD zoning, it would be very difficult to unwind after today what has been created. So it is designed to be its public purpose is Camp Valor from now into the future, which is to provide a 501c3's ability to provide the service that they're doing to the families from fallen soldiers.
Okay.
Applicant.
Are we ready for the applicant? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian, do you have the slide advancer?
Yes.
The affidavit for the mailers to notice this public meeting were turned in at the LPA meeting that we had late last month. So thank you, staff, and Mr. Donaldson for the presentation. My name is Dan Sorrow with the land planning firm of Kotler and Hearing, representing both the church and Pulte Homes. We do have members from both of those organizations in the council chambers if you have any specific questions for them after the meeting. But this partnership between Pulte and the church has been successful for many years. It's not a new project. The church received site plan approval back in 2012 and has been operating as a campus there. I think some of the county might have even been to the ribbon cutting that happened back in 2012 or shortly thereafter, after the after the church was constructed. Pulte Homes is sold. Almost all of the Phase 1 homes, they're under development with the Phase 2 platted lots that are currently being developed now. And it's been a wonderful relationship. And with that approval that was given for the PUD to be created, the High Point PUD, which actually gave Operation 300, the 20-acre parcel, as part of the overall PUD, has been operating beautifully since then. The request before you this afternoon is to remove Operation 300 from the High Point PUD so that they could be autonomous and operate on their own create and have their own destiny, not be beholden to the High Point HOA. And then as part of that transition, because the High Point community has been successful, they've also agreed to buy 6 additional acres from the church to provide for the 6 additional lots. This has been reviewed by the Growth Management Department and the local planning agency, recommended unanimous approval. And we're happy to be bringing it before you this afternoon. Most of you are familiar with where the church property is located off of Pratt and Whitney. This yellow rectangle shows about 320 acres of the overall High Point site. 20 of that is Operation 300 currently, and the church owns about 28 acres out of those 300 and 21 acres, right next to South Fork High School. We think one of the reasons that Pulte has been successful is because of the proximity to the church and to South Fork High School, but really a great community. This is the church campus. I'm sure that many people in the audience and perhaps some of the members here have been there, attended a service before, and the High Point community. This is one of the only elements of the High Point community that you can see from Pratt & Whitney. Most of all the residential development is tucked back behind buffers and preserve areas and everywhere. So it's really a nice kind of community that's surrounded by the natural beauty of Martin County. But this is the entry. This is the amenity center under construction now. If you go out to the site, you'll see that the walls are up, the frame is up, so it's getting completed. The 6 additional lots are going right across the street from the amenity center. This is the master plan for the High Point PUD. You see the church surrounded within 28 acres by the residential development. That northwest parcel of 20 acres is where Operation 300 is currently holding camps and is being removed from the overall PUD. This slide shows where the additional 6 lots are going. You can see the yellow highlighted area, which really is the ring road of Christ Fellowship Church, providing for the 6 additional acres for the Pulte lots right across from the amenity center. I did want to just bring up and just answer a couple questions that were brought up previously. This is the High Point PUD. And within the High Point PUD, we do have specific language which addresses the density issue that I think was brought up earlier. And it's on page 32 of the High Point PUD. And it says, pursuant to section 3.13.c.3 Land Development Regs, Martin County Code, all of the gross land area of the Operation 300 parcel was included and utilized for the calculation of the density for the High Point development. All residential units included in this maximum allowed density are allocated on land designated as residential areas. No residential units may be developed on the institutional areas, including the Operation 300 site as legally defined in Exhibit A4. So that's already a provision in the zoning code. I think the Attorney's Office brought up earlier that if we were, or if anyone was to come back and request zoning on any parcel, they'd have to come back before this commission, include it in a PUD, or change the zoning to allow for that. That's not what's being requested before you this afternoon. On the next application, which is the High Point application, we can get into specifics of the site plan and show how that's being allocated out. But thank you for your time. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. Commissioner Campy.
I remember when Mr. Donaldson and I went out to Christ Fellowship to have a meeting with the folks out there about a project. The history, the brief history of the project is Christ Fellowship bought this large parcel with the assumption of building like a mega campus operation there. I happened to be invited. It was a big tent they set up in the middle of the woods, practically. And I have plenty of friends, lots of us do, Martin County residents, that back in the day went to Christ Fellowship by watching it on a video screen at Martin County High School or on a video screen at South Fork High School, until I guess they built enough of a base here to build a facility. Then the sort of times changed, I think, from what I remember hearing from the folks at Christ Fellowship. The concept of a mega campus where everyone would come from further away to this one facility didn't really work. So they started thinking of a different approach, like maybe we need something up in Tradition so that the folks north of Tradition and then the Tradition area could go to a much more localized campus facility, thus making the tremendous amount of acreage that they had in Stewart not necessary. So I would be happy if I was a member of that church that my leadership said, well, we're not just going to own all of this property. What can we do with it? They made a deal with Pulte for the back portion of the property. And then my relationship with Billy and Karen Vaughn and Tara and Adam Baldwin, the family of Aaron Vaughn, who was a Naval SEAL that was killed with many others in a tragic situation, they started this concept of, hey, we noticed that children of fallen soldiers won't get the opportunity to have all of those life lessons that their sadly dead father or mother would have taught them. So they said, we're going to do this a couple times a year. But it was so powerful and so sadly popular that there were so many children that were affected by this, they needed more camps. They could have done it much more frequently. And back then, I remember helping them out, going to clean up after the camps. And what this camp is, and I'm sure we can hear from Tara, we're hearing Camp Valor, Operation 300. For people that don't know, they invite for a weekend children of fallen heroes, and also the wives. The wives get to come together and they have a weekend of being with other wives. And the children get a chance to be together, like I said. And the whole entire community, they go to the sailing center, people take them on their boats, they go learn archery and horseback riding. It's a beautiful thing. But they were forced to constantly pack up the entire camp after each camp because they never had a real home. So I remember Mr. Donaldson and I were at this meeting, and there was talk of, hey, how do we find them? They had a couple of false starts. I remember talking with Billy. People would offer property, or the county might have had a piece, but it never really worked. And so smart brains got together and said, hey, what if we did a thing, the community benefit of this project could be a parcel to Operation 300. And that's what it's been. They have been, the family, Pulte, Dan Sorrow, John Layton have been here many times to discuss as it's sort of evolved down the road. To Commissioner Hurd's point, I'm just assuming, since you're not sure of how the layout and what the structure of the camp is, I think it would be important for you to take a look. I think a lot of your concerns would be alleviated based on the fact that it's literally, originally it was repurposed FEMA trailers. The kids originally camped, like outside. And then they did some RVs, and then they did some FEMA trailers, and then they made a deal with Project Lift to get some of their constructed tiny homes. And it's been a remarkable evolution, all in the desire to allow these kids to get a chance to just be normal for a weekend with other kids that are inflicted with the same catastrophe that they have. There's no possibility of living in the FEMA trailers. There's no possibility of living permanently in the tiny homes that they got through Project Lift. There's no possibility of living in, if there is even still any RVs on the property. It's purely designed as a specific camp to give these kids some type of normalcy, even if it's just for a weekend. Then you get involved, and that's the mission for the Vaughns and Baldwins and Operation 300 and Camp Valor. They don't want to be involved in PUDs and drainage and zoning and all of the rest of it. They just want to stick with their mission. So I'm very pleased today that, one, we are finally separating them out so that the Pulte Christ Fellowship can move on with all of the stuff that they do, because that's their business, and that Operation 300 Camp Valor can move on with their mission. So I can't wait till we get to the next one. In terms of this one, so that's what Camp Valor is. So there's no possibility of them building residential units on the property. And if you spotted something, good for you to call out, and we'll have our staff sort of tweak that language to tighten it up, because it was never my intention to allow that to be. Now, in terms of the 6 extra units, that's good. It's good management. It's not like you're starting a brand new neighborhood. It's not like you're putting these houses across the street from the entrance. They're tucked in there. You found 6 acres to build 6 more houses. As far as I'm concerned, 6 more families are going to get the blessing of being able to move into a beautiful project. And I would make a motion after public comment. I would make a motion to accept staff's recommendation with the adjusted language that Commissioner Hurd had pointed out, to tighten it up. What?
That's in the next hearing.
That's in the next hearing for what, the 6 houses?
No.
Oh, for the language, I'm sorry. So the language will be for the next motion, but in this particular one, I'll accept staff's recommendation to add the 6 houses.
Commissioner Smith.
Just a little bit to add to Ed's historical overview. If anybody remembers where we started out with this property and where it has come to today and where we are today, I remember the environmental consultant that came in when we first started working with Pulte moving in that direction, and how the environmental cleaning up of the site from exotics was an enormous, almost hand-driven exercise. The site planning that went into it, the thought that went into the entire site, and then the whole Project 300 idea that came along with it is really a good reason why PUDs can work, and why you can see how the benefits of doing something like this would way outweigh anything that might have been a negative somewhere along somebody's thought process. The ability for the applicant, Operation 300, the county, to end up with a site that we have today out there is really something remarkable. I mean, what has transpired over all these years is the very coolest thing, and that wouldn't have happened if all those other steps hadn't happened along the way. Even the water and sewer that we ended up doing originally in one of the first applications of dealing with what that site was, and trying to fix South Fork's water problems that we had. There was contamination in their water system that we ended up fixing or working with them to clean up. So good for you guys. It's remarkable what you have accomplished all these years. And it's another one of those just amazing little things in Martin County that maybe a lot of people don't even know exists. But for those that have been involved, it's very, very special. And I'll second Ed's motion pending public comment.
Commissioner Heatherington.
Doug, you just touched on something. Not only is Operation 300 just an amazing organization, the mission, but I have been to the camp, and the environmental management is absolutely amazing. If every one of our properties could be managed like that, and I know that the Vaughns, the Baldwins have taken extreme amount of time, care, and hand manage that property, if you could just see and imagine that environmental benefit far and beyond what Operation 300 does for our community. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have in our community. So I would definitely support this.
Okay. I already called public. All right. Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Campy, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting. Moving on to public hearing quasi-judicial number 5, public hearing to consider a request of rezoning approval to planned unit development PUD through a PUD zoning agreement for the Camp Valor project, including a master final site plan. Mr. Elam, before we do that, is there any interveners?
There are no interveners.
Would everybody stand that is going to be testifying, be sworn in?
Raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Have any ex parte? Commissioner Smith?
I do, they're filed.
If any have been filed?
Have any of them been filed?
If I have any, they've been filed.
I don't have any, and they've been filed.
Okay, and all the proper paperwork has been turned in to the proper person. And with that, Mr. Elam.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. For the record, Brian Elam, Principal Planner with the Growth Management Department. A copy of this agenda item and my work history have been turned in as Exhibit 1. This is a request by Kotler and Hearing on behalf of Camp Valor LLC for approval of a zoning district change from the current High Point PUD zoning agreement to the planned unit development PUD, including a request for approval of the Camp Valor PUD agreement with a master final site plan. The project consists of an existing rustic campground on an approximately 19.54 acre property. Included with this application is a request for a certificate of public facilities reservation. The property is located at 9405 Southwest Kansas Avenue, approximately a quarter mile northeast of the intersection of Southwest Pratt Whitney Road and Southwest High Point Drive in Stuart, Florida. The existing zoning district on the property is PUD by way of the High Point PUD zoning agreement, which is consistent with the estate density 1 unit per acre future land use designation. Camp Valor is the name of the Operation 300 Incorporated Rustic Campground Site established as a public benefit per the High Point PUD zoning agreement on April 27th, 2021. Operation 300 is a Florida not-for-profit organization providing support to Gold Star family members. To ensure Camp Valor has the flexibility to create the best camp for their programs, they are being removed from the High Point PUD and require a valid zoning designation, which this application seeks to provide through the approval of the Camp Valor PUD zoning agreement with master final site plan. Here is the proposed Camp Valor PUD master final site plan documenting the existing developments on the property and some proposed future structures. Access to the site is from Southwest Kansas Avenue, and this proposal includes over 81% open space. This application was heard before the local planning agency on October 17th, 2024. The LPA recommended approval 3-0. Development review staff have found the Camp Valor LLC application to comply with all applicable regulations, and the comprehensive growth management plan is detailed in our staff report. And staff recommends approval of this application. We move that the board receive and file the agenda item and all its attachments, including the staff report, as Exhibit 1, and move that the board approve the request for zoning district change from High Point PUD zoning agreement to the Camp Valor PUD zoning agreement, including master and final site plan. That includes the presentation.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Hurd?
Yeah, is this binding or is this just illustrative?
It's binding
Okay,
contract.
okay, even though there are things in it that don't exist?
I don't understand.
Like the,
Oh, you mean the proposed?
I guess, I mean, they're noted on here, but they don't exist.
That's right. They can develop them, or they can choose not to.
And that would require an amendment to the final site plan?
That's a master final, so anything on that plan can be built if it's approved. But if they wanted to add something, they would have to come in and amend it.
So there's a master plan that has to come in after this?
No, that's the master final. That's the only plan you're going to see on this, and if they want to change what's on that plan, they would have to come back for a PUD amendment with a new master final site plan.
Yes, that's correct. The master final was set up so that they could do the future improvements through a building permit. So it's shown on there graphically, so they would not have to amend the master to come back and do those improvements.
Okay. I'm on page 2069, 4.1, owner, that's Camp Valor. The roads, streets, rights-of-way, preserve areas, landscape areas, recreational facilities, and other common facilities of the PUD shall be shown on any approved master plan, final site plan, and subdivision plats. And there are no subdivision plats.
Yes, that would not apply, so yes, it would just be shown on the master plan.
So why is the phrase subdivision plat included in the,
That's canned PUD language that's, you know.
Want to do it in the future?
Yeah, in the future, if something happens where it is subdivided, it doesn't have to be residentially subdivided. They can parcel off and do a final site plan revision and want to do some subdivision of the lots. So,
well, there aren't lots.
of the parcel. So it's 20-acre parcel. If somehow it got broken up in the future, it would require a plat. But it's not likely to happen, and the master plan doesn't show that, so the master plan would have to be revised to show that if that was indeed the case.
And could the master plan be revised administratively
No, not to show a division, no.
under any circumstances? Could it
Under
be
any
revised?
circumstance, any additional lots, that's why High Point had to come back before the board to add their 6 lots. They had to go back to the LPA and the board because they added lots.
Thank you.
Okay. Applicant?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the commission. I did turn in the affidavit noticing today's meeting at the LPA meeting that we had last month, so those should be part of the record for the clerk's office. Happy to be presenting this agenda item before you. Thank you for your support on the last agenda item. And this project this afternoon is really a great cause. We're going to hear from Ms. Baldwin in a second, if that's okay, Chairman. But just by way of introduction, my name is Dan Sorrow with the land planning firm of Kotler and Hearing. We do have the applicant and the property owner, Operation 300 in Camp Valor, in attendance should you have some specific questions from them, as well as other members of the consultant team and other interested parties. The request before you this afternoon is really to create a separate zoning district for Camp Valor. So as you just approved the removal of the High Point PUD from Operation 300, now we've got to assign a zoning district to Operation 300. It's a little bit less than a 20-acre site, and to approve the final master plan. So that's really the proposal before you this afternoon. This has been through each of the departments in growth management, and also received a favorable recommendation from the local planning agency last month. Just wanted to point that out. This road network, you've seen this map before, but the 20-acre parcel outlined in yellow is shown on the screen. Access to this parcel is off of Old Kansas, so you come down Canner and then go down Old Old Kansas for access. You don't access this site through Pratt & Whitney. It is existing today. They are holding monthly camps there on site today. The Operation 300 event is really wonderful, and I'd like Ms. Tara Baldwin to come up and kind of explain some of the wonderful things that they do for these children.
Hi, Tara Baldwin. I'm president of Operation 300. I do just want to say quickly, this is a really big day for us. Hopefully, fingers crossed. It's been a long time coming, and I want to say thank you, Dan, to you and to Kristen Spake with McCarthy Summers that have really guided us for several years now, mostly pro bono, which I think everyone should know when people do good things, if not completely. And also very grateful to all the county administration. You guys have been amazing to work with. To Pulte Homes, obviously, and Christ Fellowship for making this dream even a possibility. When we were talking about this in our living room, 13 years ago, we never dreamed that we would have the opportunity to own a piece of property in Martin County, that is easily accessible. It's close to the hospital. It's close to the fire station. We just never thought it would happen. So thank you to Pulte and to Christ Fellowship for including us in your plan and getting us to where we are today. And I also want to say a very special thank you to all the commissioners because, again, we've been operating in Martin County for over 12 years now, and you guys have been nothing but supportive in every endeavor that we've taken on in the community and even guiding us through this process, which seems like it's been forever. We just want to say our sincere thank you for your support. As many have explained to you today, Operation 300 is obviously a 501c3 that was founded in honor of my brother, Aaron Vaughn, who was killed in action in 2011 in Afghanistan, and the heart behind it was just to stand in the gap that was left when these men and women go off and serve our country, and who's going to teach their kids what they would have taught them, and who's going to remind them of who their parents were, and who's going to honor their sacrifice. And I'm so proud that we have been able to create this organization, and by we, I mean our entire community, and it's right here in Martin County, and I think it truly is something that Martin County should be very proud of. As Dan said, we host 6 camps per year currently, about 40 to 45 kids per camp. And you should know, we just put our camp dates out for next year for 2025 in August. They were full within a week, and we have 94 kids on a waiting list. So us getting this autonomy of being separated out is really important so that we can continue to grow to meet the need, unfortunately, that is out there. We're currently at capacity. When you see the site plan, everything we have is temporary. Even though we do have some things that are kind of stationary there, we are still setting up and tearing down, for all of these events. And we are at capacity. When we have our families there for our family dinner on a Friday night of camp, we don't have enough space under our very small pole barn that we currently have. And so we just have some plans to make a more permanent home. Also, I know you've heard me say, because this is not the first time I've been up here, when we were given this amazing gift, Dad and I talked about it so much that we felt like it was too much for just our cause, and we really want the community at large to benefit from it. And I can tell you, just this last weekend, we had 80 men use those bunkhouses and our shower trailer and our portable restrooms for a Christian men's retreat for the weekend. And we hope that in the future we can continue to partner with more organizations like that. And I'm sure they would really appreciate getting to stay in the really nice tiny houses that Project Lift built for us instead of the bunkhouses that we have currently. And I don't want to be remiss in also thanking my dad and John Layton and Stacy, as you were so kind, your words about how beautiful the property is and the care that's taken in it. I can tell you that's 100% him, and it's just been his hand in that all the way through, doing the right things, doing them slowly, doing them conservatively, so that we really do preserve what is a beautiful, beautiful piece of property that's a great representation of South Florida and of Martin County. So we would ask that you do consider removing us so that we can continue to move forward, as you'll see in our site plan, and make a permanent home and a legacy for all of these kids and everyone who has served our country. Thank you.
Commissioner Campy. No,
And they're done.
Okay.
Don't leave. Really, Operation 300 needs to control their own destiny, and with this PUD, they can be allowed to do that and operate autonomously. This is the slide showing where the 20 acres is being removed from the High Point PUD. It was shown on the last agenda item, and this is a conceptual rendering of the site plan that was in your agenda packet. And really, the funding's in place, but we can't pull any building permits until we have an approved site plan. So that's why this drawing before you is important. It allows us to be able to generate some more support and get some donations and be able to put in some of the more permanent facilities and make some improvements on the site that really is going to help the success of the full operation. So thank you for your time this afternoon, and really appreciate all the commissioners and their leadership of this county over the last few years, and happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I think this question is for you, Mr. Sorrow. So you took the initiative to be the applicant for the PUD for Camp Valor?
My firm does represent Camp Valor, yes, ma'am.
So are you also going to be the applicant to do a land use amendment?
We're not processing a land use amendment with this application, Commissioner.
Why not?
The land use is already in place.
It's estate density residential.
It's the same land use that is part of the High Point PUD, so it's overall the same land use.
So I'm not sure what the question is.
I'm saying that I think that the underlying land use is inappropriate for the use of the property. Shouldn't it be institutional?
No, it could be institutional, but the existing land use is fine because it's being instituted by a PUD. So it's comparable.
I just think it's curious that the PUD is there's a PUD application and not a comp plan amendment application, since it's the same parcel. Thanks.
Commissioner Camping.
I wish that there was no reason for you to have this camp. I wish that the Baldwin and the Vaughns never needed to do this, but I'm pleased that you did. You've heard me say this in the past. You've taken a tragedy and turned it into a beautiful thing. And I know that when you hear questions about, well, you haven't built everything yet, one, you couldn't legally because there was some of the things that we're correcting today, or at least finalizing today. And two, you're a not-for-profit. You are not multimillionaire families that are writing your own checks. You have to raise every dollar for everything that you're doing, and that requires a tremendous amount of effort. And so, to Commissioner Hurd's question about why isn't this, land uses are expensive, and I appreciate that you've had professionals willing to donate their services, but I'm sure at some point that ends. And I wouldn't want you, if our staff is telling you that a PUD is enough to get you to where you need to be, then you're not a large corporation that can just continue to have consultants sitting here and go through the process that would be tens and tens of thousands of dollars that will then be siphoned off from the other things that you could be doing. And having been out there since the beginning, it is remarkable. And like you said, Ms. Baldwin, what your dad, out there by himself, probably overdoing it on many days. But it's obviously, it's a labor of love for him. And so I think it's remarkable. And like you said, I'm so appreciative that it's here in Martin County because I have seen a lot of other not-for-profits, Project Lift as one of them, the Sailing Center, all sorts of other organizations, and you have brought in so many volunteers to participate. I know that your dad also runs a camp for the fathers of the fallen. I don't think you've missed a thing. I mean, and it's so valuable to have it here. And so I wish nobody had to go. But since it is, I am honored to make the motion for you to move forward.
Okay. We have any public comment? Seeing none, we have a motion by Commissioner Campy, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Since we have been doing the big shuffle today, and since we have Martin Commerce Park in the back of the room, let's take them. Public hearing number 4. Samantha? Public hearing number 4 is legislative public hearing to consider the adoption of a comprehensive plan amendment, CPA 23-09, Martin Commerce Park text. Ms. Samantha Lovelady.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Samantha Lovelady with Martin County Growth Management, and this is CPA 23-09, Martin Commerce Park, and this is the text amendment. This is a request by Martin Commerce Park LLC to add the property to the list of exceptions for water and sewer services and to create freestanding urban service district on 167 acres. It's also a request to change figures in the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan, Figure 4-2, Urban Services District, Figure 11-1, areas currently served by regional utilities, and Figure 11-2, potential service areas. There are several policy changes that are also being requested, and I will go through those with you. The first one is policy 4.1B2, and this applies restrictions to the property. And so the first one is number A, or letter A, residential uses shall be prohibited by this policy and deed restriction recorded in OR book and page. And I just wanted to point out that residential will not be allowed on this property. And the maximum non-residential building square footage is 1.1 million square feet for the cumulative total. And all future applications for development will be processed as a planned unit development. And prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy, the owner of Martin Commerce Park shall construct a traffic signal at the intersection of Martin Highway and Stewart West Boulevard. In letter E, the owner developer shall plan and appropriately fund public facilities consistent with policy 4.1B2, which requires that future development pay the full cost of capital facilities needed to address the impacts of such development. And that shall include an amendment to the capital improvement element, if needed, in a PUD agreement that addresses public facilities, infrastructure, and the timing of development. And policy 4.7A.3.1, and this is the all future development of use or intensity that requires public urban facilities, including water and sewer, will be permitted only within the primary urban service district, except for the following facilities. And this would be number 4 in that list of exceptions. 4.7A.14, it's a list of allowable development outside the urban service district and another list of exceptions. And this would be number 12 on that list. And of course, the ordinance number would be filled in upon adoption. Policy 10.1A8, again, the tract of real property known as Martin Commerce Park, designated as industrial on the future land use map, and that would be number 8 under that policy. Policy 10.1A12, and this was originally an exception for packaged treatment plants, but since water and sewer will be available to the property, we are now just saying packaged treatment plants shall be prohibited, because this was an exception for 7J's and Martingale Commons. Figure 4-2, this is the existing figure. And this is the proposed figure 4-2. And if you will, there we go.
We have Clyde Doolin for the record. Ms. Lovelady's bringing up a correction on figure 4-2. It's a correction for the map shown in your package. Go ahead.
So the request is for the urban service, the freestanding industrial service areas are all being placed on the map. This is the Ag Tech freestanding urban service district. This is 7J's. The one in your packet included the landfill in this area, and the landfill is not a freestanding urban service district. So we took that out. And then this would show the Martin Commerce Park. And of course, you have Gateway down here. So this is a corrected version than what's in the packet. Donna, can you get that back to full screen? Thank you. And this is the northern freestanding urban service districts in relationship to the primary and secondary urban service district. Again, you have Ag Tech here, 7J's, and the proposed Martin Commerce in relation to the secondary urban service district and the primary over here. This is the existing 11-1, which is areas currently served by regional utilities. And this is a revised that shows the freestanding urban service districts. This one does include the landfill because that is part of the Martin County service area. Existing 11-2, which is the potential service areas. And that's the proposed with the other three areas just shown on the map. And with that, the state had, the state provided comments, but they were technical assistance in nature. And the technical assistance, number one, was concurrent adoption of the FLUME application, and then the availability of public facilities. And what they're calling out with availability of public services, they're basically saying we would need to add this project to the CIP when development comes forward. And with that, I will take any questions.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Hurd?
Yeah, so if we transmitted this on September 24th, it took several days to transmit it, I would think, and yet we heard back from the state on October 3rd?
We had them trickle in from the state.
Well, the letter that you just showed us was dated October 3rd.
Right, and then we subsequently had comments from the Department of Transportation and Florida Fish and Wildlife, and so they did come in a little at a time.
Was this fast-tracked? I'm trying to understand why this comment came back so quickly.
Clyde Doolin for the record. We can't really speak for Department of Commerce. It may have been they had the available staffing.
Thank you.
You see who it's sent to, that's why it came back so fast.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Seeing none, Mr. Grady?
Good afternoon. For the record, Morris Crady, Senior Partner with Lucido & Associates. I do have the proof of notice to surrounding property owners within 2,500 feet.
Looks thin.
And yes, we did give a lengthy presentation back in September, provided a lot of data and analysis, a lot of supporting economic policies in the comprehensive plan that this project furthers along. But this kind of all started, Board of County Commissioners, they are furthering the policies and the comprehensive plan, both in Chapter 4, the future land use element, and also Chapter 15, the economic element. We had business leaders and at the September hearing talk about those goals and objectives, and this project furthers those goals and objectives. We have obtained all the comments from the other agencies, the state agencies. We've reviewed and addressed all the agencies' comments, and this project, this application was in fact approved by the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council on October 18th. So with that understanding, we certainly agree with staff recommendation. I do have one comment, though, on Figure 4-2, if you can put that revision up. I think it omitted the Martindale's Commons site. If you can, I think that needs to be, see, at the 32 acres in front, I think that needs to be included as, or not. Martindale Commons is not included? Okay.
No, it's actually an expressway oriented.
Oh, okay, that's why it's not included.
That's why we didn't put that on the map.
All right, well, I'm agreed then. I agree with that revision to the map. Okay? We'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, Mr. Campy. Didn't have to push it. Now I got it.
We have had this applicant here recently to discuss this, and I had made some statistical comments about the value of these types of operations. And so I asked Ted Astolfi from the Economic Council to just verify some of the things that I had said, because I had heard little bits and pieces of the value to all Martin County residents by approving things like that, and I'd like to share just a couple of points. Only 4% of Martin County land use is non-residential, meaning obviously that 96% of Martin County's land use is residential, which produces, the non-residential produces approximately $52 million in property and tangible personal property tax, or TPP. By increasing non-residential land use, like hopefully we're going to be doing today, by only 6% to go to a total of 10%, we would generate an additional nearly $80 million in additional ad valorem and TPP. Non-residential taxes reflect fair market value and are typically capped at 10% versus the 3% which is homesteaded residences. Non-residential property historically has generated more revenue into the county services than it receives. It pays into a system it hardly uses. Non-residential property also generates additional tax revenue through sales tax, gas tax, and other industry-specific taxes and fees. So essentially, you're getting 4 or 5 different revenue streams beyond the ad valorem and the TPP. I think most residents, when I speak to them and I tell them how lopsided our tax base is and how heavily reliant it is on residential taxes to pay for the services that our residents expect, demand, and deserve. They don't want to hear about decreases in level of service. They don't want to hear about additional taxes being that they would have to pay. This is a perfect opportunity for us to balance out our tax base. It also, that these facts don't mention, is the opportunity for locals to have employment right here where they live. So they're not constantly either living in another county, driving in to work here, or living in Martin County and having to drive out of the county. And so, if not along the thoroughfare of 95 and Martin Highway, then where? So I think that it's very important, and for Ashley Capital to choose Martin County, which has a, believe it or not, has a reputation of being difficult to deal with in terms of bringing economic development and projects of this caliber to our community. I am thrilled that the folks that own it and work there would be willing to stick with us and give us this opportunity. Today is the first, hopefully, in many steps forward that will allow our Martin County residents to breathe a bit of sigh of relief as the tax burden is shifted away from them onto other operations and projects such as this. So although I've been selfish in making motions, I would classify this another historic motion and a step in the right direction. The final thing I would say is that when we had this last time, there were members of the community that lived across the street, initially concerned that how would this be a neighbor? And after hearing what Ashley Capital was willing to invest in the community with the traffic signal that that neighborhood had wanted forever and knew that it would be a long time before they would get one on their own, the three folks that spoke emailed me or called me to say that they had changed their mind on their opposition and were now endorsing the fact that you were going to be across the street from them. So I give those gentlemen credit for seeing this as a golden opportunity, which I do. I'd make a motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Okay.
And thanks for doing it in Palm City.
Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I'm not going to be supporting the motion.
Why not?
The comprehensive plan states over and over and over again that urban facilities are only allowed in the primary urban service boundary, and that's for a very good reason. Those urban facilities are extremely expensive to provide in a small geographic area. At the distances that we're talking about, particularly for this project, they're ridiculously expensive. They're leapfrogging over the primary urban service boundary. They're leapfrogging through agricultural lands. These land uses are incompatible with all the surrounding uses. Water, I couldn't live in a more urban environment, urban neighborhood, and I don't have sewer. And a lot of my neighbors don't have water either. And yet we're going to provide it 10 miles west of town for one project. Also, the comprehensive plan wisely prohibits freestanding urban service districts for very, very good reasons. We don't want those to be isolated. We want them to be in the midst of our primary urban service boundary. That's why they're prohibited outside of that. And yet, this will be the fourth freestanding urban service boundary. One of them, Ag Tech, was passed as, it was absolutely essential that it be passed by the majority in 2010. And to this day, it remains undeveloped, just to show you how unnecessary and how harmful these kinds of decisions are. So I am not going to be supporting this. I don't know. Our comprehensive plan could not be more clear about the prohibitions of these services. And yet, exceptions are made, rendering the comprehensive plan completely inadequate. Why are we ignoring our comprehensive plan? Why are we fast-tracking these developments that are incompatible with any other developments in Martin County? Why are we abandoning our differences? Thank you.
Commissioner Campy.
I agree with my colleague that these services are very, very expensive to supply. Can I ask staff who's going to be responsible for paying for those expensive services?
The applicant.
Say it again?
The applicant.
Okay, so the taxpayers are not going to be paying for these expensive services to be run out there. The applicant is going to be paying for these services. In terms of putting this closer to the core or within the urban service boundary, this is a project that's going to be potentially hundreds of thousands of hopefully hundreds of thousands of square feet of space. Miss Lovelady, how many total square feet is this project eligible to go to? I know the answer, I just want you to say it.
1.1 million square feet.
1.1 million, so
And
if,
that's cumulative, that's not per building.
I understand, all 100,000, 50,000, 25,000, potentially 1 million square feet of services. To my colleague's point, we should be putting this in where people live, inside the urban service boundary, so that it could be your next-door neighbor. This room would be filled with people tearing their hair out if this was a project that was going to be proposed where I'm hearing it should be. It would also be nearly financially impossible, or literally impossible, to find property large enough to squeeze in 1 million square feet and all of the other things, and you'd have to put it right on people's neighborhoods. Where it is now, it is across the street, as I mentioned in my initial comments, from Stewart West and Cobblestone. They will barely see it, but can you imagine if this was your next-door neighbor? So I get my colleague, and I appreciate what she's saying. Hopefully she can appreciate what I'm saying, but if not, that's okay. I think that this is the appropriate location, as well as the fact that when you put it next to 95, if it does generate truck traffic, would all of those trucks that are going to be probably participating in this site, would you want them going up and down every other road in Martin County? Would you want them driving through on Cove and Salerno and into meeting these areas where the comprehensive plan that was written in the 80s would say was appropriate? I think the comprehensive plan in all of its magnificence is meant to be a living, breathing document that would have to take into consideration new economic changes and challenges. And this, to me, I mean, there are points when Commissioner Hurd and I completely agree. There are points when we sometimes like slightly disagree. And in cases like this, where we're obviously completely in disagreement, I think this is a great idea. Hence, I made the motion.
Commissioner Smith?
Two other thoughts that come to mind with this application. Years ago, there was an applicant that came forward and wanted to deal with the entire sort of interchange issue. They applied, they were turned down, they sued us, and we lost, which cost the county a fair amount of money to go through that battle. A remedy to that, which then brings in the second piece of that, had that application gone through, a package plant would have been built at that interchange that would have been of the scale, at least from what I remember. The requirements back then would have been to satisfy all four quadrants of the I-95 710, yeah, 710. Canner, no, not Canner.
714.
714. I always get all those jumbled up. 714 intersection. So we would have had a fairly significant package plant sitting on the southeast quadrant because they were the first ones in. And as I recall, at least what used to exist was the first one in had to provide for everyone.
Privately operated.
Privately operated. So we lost the litigation. We spent money. We ended up with a settlement agreement or a settlement to agree to bring water and sewer to the site. We only included in that agreement what made sense with the landfill, the sheriff's department, 7J's, which was an existing industrial PUD that had been there for decades, right? That was kind of floundering because it didn't have water and sewer, and to put in either a package plant or to put in septic tanks would have significantly or did significantly limit the capacity of what 7J's could do. And that was all at a time when we as a community were trying to figure out how to come out of the recession and what could we do to move us forward and get us back on track. And so here we are today with a developer-funded piece of infrastructure that will help provide at least to those other sites as well. And they are participating as well. 7J's is paying, correct? For their hookup or their capacity. And that's what it's limited to, at least at this time. So I think it was a good move. It was unfortunate we had to go through litigation to get there, but we are there. Ed, did you make a motion?
I did, yep.
I did second it? Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I probably asked, didn't? Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, we have a motion by Commissioner Campy, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 4-1. Commissioner Hurd dissenting. Public hearing number 5, legislative public hearing to consider adoption of comprehensive plan amendment CPA 23-10 Martin Commerce Park Future Land Use Map Amendment. Ms. Lovelady.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Samantha Lovelady for the record, Growth Management Department. This is CPA 23-10, Martin Commerce Park Future Land Use Map Amendment. It's a request by Martin Commerce Park to 167 acres from agricultural and agricultural ranchette to industrial. And it is located south of Martin Highway, at the corner, just south of the corner of I-95. This is the existing future land use map. So you have agricultural and you have ag ranchette. This is the proposed map outlined in turquoise. And again, this is located east of I-95 and Martin Highway. It is accompanied by the text amendment that you just had. And in section 2.1 of the staff report, 2 out of the 4 criteria for the future land use map amendments that need to be met, there's 4 criteria that need to be met, and 2 of those criteria have been met. In section 2.2, urban sprawl, 8 out of 13 criteria have been met. That means there's 13 criteria that need to be met, and 8 of those have been. Section 2.2.1, proliferation of sprawl, 4 out of 8 criteria have been met. That it shows that it discourages the proliferation of sprawl. And with that, staff recommendation is for a motion to recommend approval of CPA 23-10 Martin Commerce Park. I do want to make note of, we did receive comments from the Florida Department of Transportation, and they provided several technical assistance comments. They weren't objections, but they were comments that we addressed. The traffic analysis impact statement that was issued last March had several things that the Department of Transportation had issue with. So they redid their traffic impact analysis, which adjusts the traffic distribution to more accurately reflect the property's proximity to 95 and updates the anticipated traffic volumes in the long-range plan. And it identifies the net increases in the traffic volumes that would be generated by the land use of industrial. After staff's review of the updated technical traffic impact analysis, Public Works has provided comments that staff can now provide a positive evaluation, meaning there is a sufficient roadway capacity planned in the adopted long-range capital facility plans of the comprehensive plan. So with that, staff recommends approval.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Applicant?
Again, for the record, Morris Crady, senior partner with Lucido and Associates, here on behalf of the applicant. And this is the companion application to the text amendment that was just approved. It sets out the land use on the property and gives us the ability to go to the next step, which will be a PUD application in the future after we get the zoning changed to LI in the next agenda item. So we're in agreement with staff recommendation. We'll be glad to answer any questions. Oh, I'm sorry, the notice that I turned in was for the text amendment and for this land use map amendment.
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, any public? Seeing none, back to the board.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I'm not going to support the motion. The comprehensive plan requires that there be 4 criteria for a future land use amendment that must be met in order to qualify for a recommendation of approval. There are 4 of them. None of them have been met, not even close. The first is past changes in land use designations in the general area make the proposed use logical and consistent with these uses, and adequate public services are available. That certainly is not met. B, growth in the area in terms of a development of vacant land, redevelopment, and availability of public services has altered the character of the area such that the proposed request is now reasonable and consistent with area land use characteristics. That certainly has not been met. The third, the proposed change would correct what would otherwise appear to be an inappropriately assigned land use designation. That one has not been met. And the proposed change would fulfill a public service need that enhances the health, safety, or general welfare of county residents. That one hasn't been met. I have no idea how staff can recommend approval when it is so clear that none of the criteria necessary to make a recommendation for approval has been met. Not even close. There's not even a whisper of agreement. It's clearly, it represents all of the 13 criteria for urban sprawl. It proliferates urban sprawl. It's incompatible with all the neighboring land uses. It's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. There was a commercial and industrial land analysis done in Martin County. It was completed in 2023. And it concluded that the industrial development database query indicates approximately 90 acres of vacant industrial development has taken place in Martin County since 2011, or 9 acres per year on average. 9 acres per year. They conclude that there's sufficient industrial land within the unincorporated areas for the present and the future. And yet, one of the parcels that's included in this is Ag Tech. It was formerly 1,735 acres of industrial. 1,735, maybe 100 has been sold to the Water Management District. So that has been available and vacant since 2010, and it's still vacant. So obviously, we don't need any of these changes. They are harmful for us, they're inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, they're incompatible with the character of Martin County. And staff should make recommendations of no when you find these criteria. That's it.
Commissioner Campy, we do have a motion in a second.
I understand that there is a motion and a second. I just need to make sure that I clear the air on some of the things that I hear, just for people that are paying attention. Ag Tech, I was here for Ag Tech. It was originally a King Ranch project, one of the largest private landowners in Martin County at the time, so it was not like a fly-by-night company that had showed up to do it. Basically hamstrung them by saying that they could have that there, but there would be no water and sewer, because this was well before what we're talking about today. So they were going to have to bring water and sewer down from Port St. Lucie, which is a Herculean effort involving multiple counties and multiple government municipalities. And also there was recession, difficult times doing business in Martin County, pandemic, some other things that hampered that. The good news is that they've sold that property to someone else who hopefully in the future, if this doesn't dissuade them, hopefully in the future will come forward with some other exciting opportunities as well, that they'll continue to have to bring the services down from another county, another municipality. So that's the reason that Ag Tech has not really gotten off the ground. There were a couple of opportunities. There were some projects that could have happened there. I had the opportunity of meeting with some folks that were very, very interested in going there. But when they realized how difficult it was to navigate through the process here, and most communities, when businesses come to town and look to hire hundreds of employees and invest millions of dollars, they're welcomed. And there's a whole, recruiting opportunity. We don't have that here. So it really takes quite thick skin and brave people to participate. I agree, I like that process. It really is a vetting process to make sure the ones that can make it all the way to the finish line are exactly what we want. And in terms of that report that said we've had 9 acres of development over the last several years per year, I think that's a terrible statistic, and it goes back to the point that I said that our residential taxpayers are forced to pay for all of the things that they deserve because we don't have those industrial opportunities here for them. So in case you weren't sure, I'm for it.
Yeah, that screaming match in 2015 over Ag Tech is one of the reasons why I'm sitting at this dais. So we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1. Commissioner Hurd dissenting. Now we must go to public hearing quasi-judicial number 3.
Let's do this one more time.
Yeah. Which is public hearing to consider an amendment to the Martin County zoning atlas to change the zoning district classifications for comprehensive plan amendment CPA 23-10, Martin Commerce Park rezoning. Miss Samantha Lovelady. And this is quasi-judicial, so we must ask, is there any
Intervenor?
interveners?
No.
No. Would everybody like to stand that is going to testify?
Raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Has the paperwork been trees chopped down to satisfy the?
And the complete.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any,
If I do, they're filed.
If any, they've been filed.
if any, that have been filed?
I don't have any. That's been filed.
I don't have any, and that's been filed.
Take it away.
All right. Again, my name is Samantha Lovelady with Growth Management. This is CPA 23-10, Martin Commerce Park, rezoning. Again, this is a request by Martin Commerce Park LLC to change the zoning atlas on 167 acres from A2, AG20A, and AR5A to limited industrial. This is the subject parcel. This is the existing zoning of AR5A here, AG20A here, and A2 here. And this is the proposed zoning, which would be limited industrial. And this is, staff recommends a motion to adopt the proposed zoning district change from A2, AG20A, and AR5A to limited industrial. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, applicant, Mr. Crady.
For the record again, Morris Crady here on behalf of the applicant. And the notice, the proof of notice I provided included this zoning change as well. So that's been done to the surrounding property owners. And really, the LI zoning district is just to make the zoning consistent with the land use, but the text that we propose requires a PUD application. So that will come back before the county commission as a rezoning request from LI to PUD. So with that understanding, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Crady? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none.
Staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor? Aye.
Wait, you got a light.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not going to support the motion. It's completely incompatible with all the surrounding zoning. It's out of character for Martin County to put 1.1 million square foot warehouse that's visible from I-95. Ag Tech lack of development proves that there is no need for industrial in western Martin County. The commercial and industrial capacity study analysis that was just completed in 2023 clearly demonstrated that there was sufficient industrial land necessary for development in the present and the future, and therefore it's incompatible, unnecessary, and also there's no labor force nearby. Everyone who works at this site will have to commute there, so it's a bad fit.
okay. Where were we?
I'm for it.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. And I asked for public comment. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1. Commissioner Hurd dissenting.
Thank you, members of the board.
Now we're going to go back to, which I kind of missed, Public hearing number 3, public hearing to consider adoption of an ordinance amending Article 11, Planned Mixed-Use Village, Land Development Regulations, Martin County Code. Peter Walden.
Money buys.
What's that?
Good afternoon. Pete Walden, Deputy Growth Management Director. This is a request by Mattamy Homes for a revision to Article 11. Article 11 is the planned mixed-use village, which pertains to the Newfield development. Little history and discussion about the mixed-use village, land use and the mixed-use village LDRs. All of the residential dwellings, commercial, retail, and non-residential uses are already entitled in the land use. It has 4,200 units, 290,000 square feet of commercial and office, and 2 million square feet of other non-residential, possibly industrial workspace. None of the entitlements for the project or the code is being discussed today. It's all just minor housekeeping things. And this is basically the regulating plan for the Newfield development. And none of this is changing today either. You'll see that these wide open spaces are protected by conservation easements and PAMPs. And the next slide shows the same entitlements that are reflected in the land use, the 4,200 units, 290,000 square feet of space. None of that, again, is being touched today. We're just talking about some clarity in the zoning code, which the applicant will go over. There's also a development agreement that is attached to the project, which goes through those same entitlements and encompasses a level of service, things that the applicant has to attain to be consistent with the code and the land use. So none of those things are changing today. We're basically talking about some housekeeping in the code. Newfield has been under development now for about a year. It's been in the planning stages for about 6 years. And now that we've actually applied some of the code, we found a few things that need to be clarified, a few things for consistency in the code, because it's very specific. And we want to make sure that going forward, since we're starting to get the ball rolling out there, that things are appropriately done. And I want to say that this was before the local planning agency in October, and the local LPA voted unanimously to approve the changes. And this is a copy of the first master plan that was approved. It's the Crossroads neighborhood. And you can see there's over 30 blocks of development inside of this master plan. And it contains residential and commercial uses. And as you might expect in doing a 1,200 unit development, that there might be some tweaks needed as you go through the final site plan stages. And that's exactly what we did a couple months ago. I brought a revised master plan because at that time the code required us, even if you made minor changes to it, that we'd have to make those changes before the board in a master plan. So we're adding a little bit of flexibility to the code, which the applicant will go into, but it's basically just to be able to tweak block sizes, the appropriation of transects by 10%, just minor changes that we could do administratively, just so that everything fits when it gets done with the infrastructure and the final site planning. So with that, I'll turn it over to, if you don't have any questions for me, I can turn it over to the applicant who will actually go through the code changes, and we'll go from there.
Any questions for staff? Yes, no, yes, no.
Is it this one?
I have questions for staff first.
Okay.
No, that's not my thing.
Oh, there you go. No? No, that's Mountain Carmen's. We got quite a few on here.
East one, this one.
Yes.
Go, no, up there.
No?
It's the date. No, that's not it. Okay. Well, just put your power, you have your.
Okay, hold on.
I have the ordinance.
Mr. Hurd has a question for you. Or two.
First question is on page 665. I'm looking at the Table 3.2 Transect standards, and SDW, which is included in the changes today, is included, and it says residential density is not applicable. What does that mean? Does that mean that residences are not allowed in SDW workplace?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again? I
Yeah,
apologize.
I'm on the table on page 665, and I'm looking at SDW Workplace, which is the subject of this staff report. And it says that residential densities are not applicable in SDW Workplace.
Right, there's no minimum density required.
What density is allowable?
They can make up the 4,200 units if they're outside of the other neighborhoods in the workplace. It does allow density, but it's flexible in the LDRs as to how much that is.
Do you know what SDW allows?
It allows the appropriate amount of residential to go with the 2 million square feet of workspace that's allocated for the SDW.
And minimum, let's see, minimum residential density for T5 mixed-use center is 32 units per acre?
Yes, that's a net density, yes.
It's minimum.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'm on page
Get it.
683.
Okay.
All right, first one, development outside the urban service boundary shall require a final site plan.
Yes, that's because there are a few trailheads that we're site planning to access the preserve areas. There's the main preserve area, PAMP 1, and then PAMP 2 is all the public open space. And part of the requirement for level of services is to provide access to those public open spaces. We didn't want to not include the actual Article 11 development review requires all site planning to follow a master plan. Well, we're not master planning outside of these neighborhoods, so that's why we said any of these areas require a final site plan, and it's just for small things like the trailheads.
On the next page, 684, if the applicant fails to meet the resubmittal deadline, the applicant may be terminated instead of shall be terminated. I thought the deadline requirements were requirements.
No, we actually made that flexibility in Article 10 for the rest of the application process as well. That gives them a little flexibility. Again, they only have 30 working days to turn these things around, so that sometimes gets arduous, so we don't have to terminate anything.
For plat approval process, they don't have to have public notice?
That's correct.
And this language has been stricken, no lot site plan shall be approved by the building department unless a plat consistent with the approved final site plan has been recorded. Page 686.
Yes, there's been changes in state law regarding plats, and we can no longer require that. They are allowed to actually start development of lots without the plat being recorded because of the preliminary plats that are now subject to state statute.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. I will look for the PDF of the applicant's. It'll just be 1 second, and we'll get that up, and she can do her presentation. Oh, you did put it on the desktop? Right here? Thank you, Liz.
One that says Newfield.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and staff. Marcella Camblor. For the record, I am here as the Office of the Settlement Architect. The Office of the Settlement Architect is to have all the fun.
It's not a PowerPoint.
It's not a PowerPoint anymore.
Full screen.
My
mode,
bad.
Marcella?
I'm sorry. I wanted to do full screen, but I.
Go do where you just were. Go back. No.
There you go.
Did you do it?
Donna did.
Magic.
She knows what she's doing.
I knew where you were supposed to go with it, but magic of Donna.
So I also want to say that these edits, this amendment to the code was mostly initiated by the Office of the Settlement Architect, by Dover Cole and Partners, who were the original designers for the Newfield Master Plan, working in conjunction with staff. And then we worked with the applicant. And most of this started because as we were reviewing some of the plans that were coming forward, we started noticing typos and some errors in the code. And then we also started noticing, I'll get to it in a second, some of the design elements that were not coming out the way they were originally intended. You know, when we do codes, the joke in the profession is as we turn it in or it gets approved, when are we scheduling the glitch bill? Interestingly enough, this code was approved together with the overall vision for Newfield, and this was back in 2018. So it's pretty interesting, a pretty good record that for 6 years we haven't had to come in with any sort of amendment or glitch bill. Just as a little bit of background, back in 2018, this commission approved the plan for Newfield. We always said it was a new vision, one where the human environment and the natural environment were connected like no time before in development, at least in this county. It was a time where 70% of the land was slated to be preserved as green and open and accessible to the public in perpetuity. And at the time, the applicant, Mr. Kiplinger, had the choice to do a PUD that could change with every person that comes in to do development, or create the necessary predictability for this process, take a longer path, and create a new element of the comprehensive plan and its corresponding code, which is what you all know as the PMUV, or the Planned Mixed-Use Village, which lives in Article 11 of the LDRs. We are here today to make some amendments to that PMUV. Now, also approved, I think it was during the pandemic, 2020, the first master plan, which is the one you see in red here, which is known as the Crossroads District, was approved by the 5 of you. That is the downtown. That is currently under construction. That has a mix of recreation areas and farmland, retail, office, and a significant component of different types of residential buildings. What's interesting is rather than approving as a second phase another residential neighborhood, Mattamy, who is the master plan, the master developer that was selected by Mr. Kiplinger, rather than trying to approve neighborhood number 2 or number 5 or number 4 that you see here in this regulating plan, they thought that the plan would be more complete if they instead approved first one of the workplace districts. Commissioner, you were asking about SDW, one of the workplace district areas, to not just only have retail and entertainment and residential, but to start to bring jobs to the area and really start to contain and create a sustainable and walkable environment in that area. Since the approval of this first master plan, as you well know, a PAMP 1 was established and a PAMP 2 was established, and they are currently being preserved and managed. That pretty much takes care of that roughly 2,400 acres of open space that were promised to remain open, accessible, and public in perpetuity. It was an important thing for Mr. Kiplinger to make sure that that got taken out of the table and preserved for the community from the get-go. Since then, also, the Kiplinger Conservancy has been established. There are several layers to make sure that this land is open, public, and not developable in the future. The first few Kiplinger Conservancy trails have been built and are already accessible to the public. The Newfield Farm was also completed. And as you can see, unlike most residential development projects, this started with the development of the green and the public areas. After that, Mattamy moved on to implementing the horizontal infrastructure of that first downtown neighborhood. Some of you have already been out there. There was a soft opening. All of you have been out there, okay. Well, staff too, maybe. People in the audience haven't. If not, you should. And so horizontal construction is in progress. Some of the vertical construction is in progress. Newfield Parkway is under construction. And like I said, then we moved on to approval of the first workplace district to attract the jobs. Just a few images from the air of the construction of Newfield Parkway as this boulevard section through town. You can see the farm. This is one of my favorite places in this neighborhood, because if you're standing at the end of the farm, as you can see when you visit there, if you do a 360 turn, you will see agriculture, you will see development, residential, mixed use, and then you will see pristine, untouched, natural areas. I don't know of another area where you can just turn around 360 and see all of those components from a single spot. You can see the trailheads with very natural parking and access to some of the most pristine trails in the region. Again, some more areas of the barn. These are a little earlier than what you've seen on that soft opening. And the first few residential units. They're diverse in style, they're diverse in size, they're again, in 1 and 2 stories, intended for different incomes and different compositions of families, just as it was intended to be diverse by Mr. Kiplinger. You've seen there in the first phase, there's townhouses and duplexes and single-family homes, from small cottages to large estate homes. We worked hard to make sure that the architecture is consistent with historical precedent in the region. So that was just a little bit of an intro. I know you don't need a very long presentation given the day you've had. The extent of this request can be sort of grouped into 4 categories. There's update of some glossary terms. We had some terms in the code that weren't really defined, so we're going in there and defining those and clarifying those. There's clarifications. We have some graphics that show certain things, and then it's not totally clear with the text what is pointing to what, so we're clarifying those. There's a series of spelling mistakes, but also when this got translated into Municode completely repeated an entire paragraph for 2 different frontage elements, and so we had to correct that. And number 4, there are some changes to the code. There's some changes to transit standards, to open space types, and to some street types. I want to start with number 4 because that is the substantive change that we are requesting that you consider today. And then I am prepared to go in as much detail on all the other Scrivener's errors and clarifications as is the pleasure of the board. The first of the changes, if you look at this chart, has to do with this area crossed out here that is lot coverage in the workplace district. So what this means is when we prepared this table, we established how much of each parcel of each lot, a building and its parking could cover, for each parcel that you're trying to develop. And so the maximum, we said, when you count your parking and your sidewalks and your building, is 60%. The remainder needed to remain open. Now, keep in mind, we've already set aside 70% of the entire site as open space. This is in addition of that 70%. What we started noticing was as plans were coming in for workplace areas, for offices, for flex space in this workplace district, we were ending up with blocks. If you can imagine these yellow areas as blocks that have a small green belt, because every parcel has a 20 to 30-foot setback that has to be green and landscaped. And then in addition to that, it had an additional percentage, about 20%, that had to remain green. And so in these flex buildings, we were ending up with these little private green yards that nobody was really using. It was maybe a piece of green in the middle of a private parking lot in the back of a warehouse. And so it wasn't really amounting to much. There was a 5% requirement in the workplace district of public open space, again, in addition to the 70%, and then a 60% lot coverage with 40% pervious. What we did is we suggested, okay, we're not going to change that 40% requirement. However, leave that 20%, we're going to increase the lot coverage on the blocks to 80%. And instead, we're going to require that those chunks of green that were remaining in the parking lots all be consolidated and moved onto the public realm. So the math is the same. The amount of space that in the entire district needs to be left as open is the same. It's just that now there's more of it that is public instead of private. You can see, again, the two diagrams. It's the same amount of green, but in the proposed change, that green is a park or a plaza as opposed to somebody's backyard, which wouldn't have been a problem in residential, but it is a problem in industrial, because who's going to take care of that, and what is that space really amounting to? What's interesting about this strategy, too, is that in the required strategy, you weren't getting those small percentages of green until each parcel got developed. In the proposed, as the infrastructure for the workplace district gets built, this green needs to come in. So it's not like as people come in, they can, try to do an amendment and not build their green. These greens get built from the get-go. So unfortunately, you can't see what the proposal was before because it's a PDF, so it flattened it. But the master plan that you're going to see in the next agenda item will show that once we take all those 20% and make them from private to public, we end up with this green necklace that is going to connect the entire workplace district onto the Martin County baseball fields and school, and then as this moves forward into the parking lot, the other neighborhoods. Before this, 5% was this amount down here. Right now, with this change, this entire district will have a much larger green space. Other changes or corrections or clarifications include, if you look at this same chart, it did say that the first floor height, the floor to ceiling height had to be 9 feet, and T3, T4, and then T5 only referenced what that floor to ceiling height was as 14 feet. That's because this is the category that anticipates having retail on the ground floor, except we had not said, well, if you do have residential on the ground floor, you still have that 9-foot floor to ceiling. You don't have to do the 14. Another change in this chart has to do with the fact that townhomes are allowed a lot coverage of 90%. This was a mistake on our part. We had drawn townhomes the way normally we put townhomes, and then we realized that we had kept single-family detached home lot coverage percentages on townhomes. So we could not build the townhome to fit the lot. And again, I have to emphasize over and over again, this is not affecting the 70% open space that was left. This is in addition to that 70% internal to the lots. Another small, at least small, I think, from the planning perspective, is as you develop each neighborhood, there's a requirement to mix transit zones, to go from the densest to the least dense in every single neighborhood. We really have 5 transit categories, 3 of which T5, T4, and T3 are the ones that hold development. T3 is the least dense, T5 is the most dense. T4 was split into 2 different categories, T4R, which means T4 mostly residential, and T4O, which is a mid-dense category that allows for commercial uses. They have different densities, and they were split as far as the percentage that you had to have of each. It was really complicated to hit those percentages. It is pretty much the same building types. There's a difference of use between one and the other, and there is a difference of density between one and the other. We're just saying you can count it combined, but you're still going to apply the density depending on the percentage you used. Now, one could say, oh, well, this is going to benefit the developer because they're going to pick T4R and use the 20 units to the acre instead of the 12 unit to the acre of the T4O. It doesn't really matter in Newfield because unlike the rest of your comprehensive plan, this is entitled for a fixed number of units. That was the predictability. You can't go over the total amount that was entitled. If you want to take more in one neighborhood than in the other, so long as you meet your minimums, it's okay. The remainder of this is incorporating building types that we failed to put in initially that just made sense. For example, we were allowing a hotel, but we didn't allow the inn, which was smaller, and it just made sense in the workplace district. In some cases, we forgot to allow playgrounds or parks in a couple of the districts. It was clear in our calculations of open space that wetlands are not to be counted into the calculation of transit zones. If we did that, the minimum net densities will become horrendous. They will become really high. We're just clarifying that we don't have to include calculation of wetlands. Those are already part of either PAMP 1 or PAMP 2 or PAMP 3. They're not to be used to calculate transit zones and artificially increase densities inside the neighborhoods. That was a clarification. We clarified the definition of blocks. As you can see in the master plan, we have a couple of blocks that are neighboring the turnpike and neighboring Citrus, but there's a county parcel, or some of them are neighboring wetlands. Because the Newfield plan requires that blocks be of a certain dimension, and we drew them that way, we were saying, okay, if you're neighboring the turnpike, we will count that as one of the edges of your block, just as we drew it. And if you're neighboring a wetland, yes, that is the edge of your block. We're not bringing the wetland into your block. Again, to make sure we keep those areas in check as they were intended. And at this point, like I said, pleasure of the board, I can go over the other small edits or clarifications, like for this one, for example. If you look really close, you can see the finished floor inside just a little bit higher than the finished floor on the porch. That's a difference of 4 inches. We were clarifying where you're measuring the 24-inch elevation that your finished floor needs to occur, from the porch or from the inside. And so, like I said, I can keep going, or if you have specific questions, I can go into the specific items you may have questions of.
Do we have any specific questions for, huh?
I was reading that.
Oh.
I'm looking.
While you look, the last section of the changes are procedural changes. Most of these were proposed by staff, partly because some of the sections we were originally referencing were now, had changed in other portions of the code. Some of it was to, as Pete said, there's a lot of leeway in this code that allows the applicant to ask staff for administrative approvals. And so staff went in and specifically stated, what are the things that can be considered an administrative approval, and when does a plan have to come to the board? And it's really limiting what those are. But like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions. Actually, in this one, while you look, Commissioner Hurd, I know you're going to have a lot of questions. I'm happy to clarify them. As you can see right here, that is what the 5% was required. This is the plan as we designed it for Mr. Kiplinger. And the plan that you're going to see shortly from that little square instead now has all of this. That's because we moved that percentage from private to public.
Commissioner Smith.
It's more of a general comment. The brilliance of what was envisioned from the very beginning of all this, I think, is starting to pay off. I don't know, certainly in Martin County, there's nothing that comes close to the level of detail and the level of importance in how this thing was done. Most importantly, and I would say this to Mattamy if they were in my office, I would say it to them in the room, the importance of having this settlement architect keeps everybody in check. It keeps all the vision, should keep all the vision in check, that what Knight envisioned for his family, for the legacy of his name, continues on. What Marcella just went through, which is probably why there aren't all sorts of lights on, is incredibly complicated and incredibly detailed. And there's a reason for all that, because our idea of creating its own chapter, creating all of its own details, was to make sure that this didn't get bogged down in a lot of other stuff that makes up the comprehensive plan. That all the specificity that everybody worked so hard to get to is embodied in all this. And so I wish Mattamy the very best in your efforts to do this. So far, so good. Stay the course. Staff's recommendation.
I'll second it.
Okay, what?
Okay, never mind. I was just going to say that I was, when this got presented, I was not on the board, but I was cautiously optimistic, and I was there the other day for the soft opening or grand opening, and I also, it was, my family grew up in the area, and I was adamantly against when you changed the name to Citrus Boulevard, but I'm very, very pleasantly surprised. I like what you're doing. I think it's going to be an addition to the community at whole, so I will second Commissioner Smith's motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith.
I'm not familiar. Where is the project being built again?
West of Palm City.
Citrus Boulevard.
Palm City.
Seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting. And we are going to take a 10-minute closed captioning break.